announcement. So yeah, so I have some announcement. So I posted them in the chat for everyone. Have a look. So the announcement are in general, like if you want to attend these sessions, this is the mailing list. Subscribe to it. Talk announcement will be made on that list. The recording of the talk will be available, but it will take 1 or 2 days, and the link is there where the recording will be there. Also, there will be there's a Google form about the feedback regarding the talk and in general logistics about the talk. So if you want to tell up anything to us or even Arpita about the talk, just use that form. We recently started a Discord channel for other data science updates. So we will planning to have some more events in the fall. So apart from the stock and all, so please join the channel to get more updates, and also we post about jobs and other thing in that channel. So uh, please join if you wanted to. And if anybody of the attendance person want to give a talk or is interested to talk about something which they want to talk or they want to hear, they can always email the two email address which is given there. And now enjoy the talk. Yeah, that's all. So let me first introduce Arpita. So Arpita is a PhD student, is in fact a Google PhD fellow in Department of Computer Science and Automation at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, India. And she has won numerous awards, and so she is a HLF fellow also, and Grace, I think Grace Hopper uh, fellowship also, and she has given talks at several places and all. Her area of interest is mostly in computational social choice theory and fairness in machine learning. Prior to her PhD, she was a research engineer in Xerox Research Center, India, and she has worked on several spaces like multi-agent learning, incentive mechanisms, facility location planning and scheduling. And she is very much interested in solving problem arising from real world scenarios, like resource allocation, crowdsourcing, dynamic pricing. And we will hear about some of these problems in today's talk. So before wasting any more of your other precious time, like I hand over to Arpita to speak. You are here to listen to her, not me. So Arpita, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek, for the wonderful introduction. So yeah, that covers my first slide. And I'll just mention that my PhD thesis is around looking at fairness in algorithmic decision making, and my PhD supervisors are Siddharth Burman and Y Narahari. Okay, let's. Oops. Okay. So, yeah, today I'm going to talk about two-sided fairness guarantees for recommendation systems. And this work has been accepted at the web conference this year. It's also known as WWW20. I have this amazing list of co-authors with me: Gaurav, Patro, Professor Nilay Ganguly from IIT Kharagpur, Professor Krishna Gumadi from MPI, and also Abhigyan from MPI. So here's the outline of my talk. So I'll start by describing what is a recommendation system and what are the problems involved in a recommendation system. Then I'll talk about a different setting, which is fair allocation of resources. And then I'll connect this two to show how fair allocation of resources can be used to guarantee guarantee two-sided fairness in recommendation systems. Then I'll list down our theoretical and experimental results and finally conclude with some open questions, future directions mainly. Now, let's start with what is a recommendation system. Now, in a very general way, recommendation systems are algorithms that aims to suggest relevant items to users. So what are these items? These items are movies to watch or news articles to read or products to buy. And I think we all would agree that recommendation systems have become a part of our daily life, daily online life. Like whenever we open Amazon or YouTube or any food delivering apps, we always see like a list of recommended items in the whenever we open the app. So it's actually very crucial part of all of our lives. And in fact, it is a very crucial part in this e-commerce and online advertisement platforms, because it's very important to have like an efficient recommendation system to attract more customers, to give them more personalized advertisements. And recently there has been like a lot of a lot of articles has been there which talks about why recommendation systems are so important for these platforms and how they are increasing their revenues by using more fine-grained recommendations. For example, there is news that this 35% of the purchases that happens on Amazon are because of the recommendations that they provide. And also for Netflix, it has been seen that nearly 75% of what people are watching on Netflix is all because of the recommendations that they get whenever they open the app, the first screen. And also these recommendations are responsible for almost 70% of the time that people spends on watching videos on YouTube. So it is indeed a very important part of online platforms like this. So let's take an example, and we'll slowly get into the exact problem that we are trying to solve. But again, this is like a very high level problem. Let's say there's a user who is using an online music app. So what this user would expect is a personalized list of songs or music whenever this user opens their app. Now, on the other hand, the online music service would implement some recommendation algorithm to generate this personalized playlist for the user. Now, let's go inside this recommendation algorithm box. So internally, what is happening is that the platform is aware of this user's interaction with the app. So it logs what kind of music the user has previously listened to, which time of the day the user is listening to what kind of music, etc. It also has an idea of what music the user has liked, which one it has disliked, which one the user has never listened to. So using all this information, the online music service would try to create a user music correlation. And this correlation is important to understand that given a new user and a new song or artist, how relevant is this song for this particular user. So basically you can think about this as a matrix, and the correlation would give a relevance score to each user music pair. Now, so there has been a lot of techniques involved in understanding this user and item interaction, mainly to understand how relevant are different items for user. And I'm interchangeably saying items and music, but in this context, I refer to music whenever I say items. So in general, learning relevance scores, so all the techniques can be broadly categorized into like content-based or collaborative recommendation. So in content-based recommendations, what happens is you have some idea of some explicit features for each user. So you might have some idea about which location this user is in, like which time of the day user listens to most of the songs, or you might know about their age, gender, and other features. And on the other hand, for each song or music, you might also have some explicit features. For example, what genre the song is, or if it's a music, like what instruments have been played. So all these things forms like content of so what is an user and what is a particular song can be represented by feature vectors. And then this content-based recommendation would try to see that, would ask this question that given this song, what is the probability that a user will like this song? So you can think about various approaches. Again, broadly, you can think that the user would end up liking a song which is similar to what it has listened to in the past. So it would try to relate what songs are similar to this particular song and whether user has liked that one. Yeah, and there are many other ways to do this. And there's another kind of technique which is collaborative recommendation, where you have this abstract sense of, so you can again think about a matrix where you have rows as users, columns as each song, and then each user would have given some rating or whether they have liked or not. That information is available. Now the idea is to look at the matrix and interpret like how likely a user is to listen to another song which is not in the matrix. So these two are like really broad approaches, and there are some hybrid approaches that combines these two. And all this would give you some relevance scores for each user and song pair. And after that, there's a post-processing step, and I'll come to this a bit later. So after post-processing, it would finally generate this set of playlist. Now, typically, this post-processing step is finding the top K recommendation. So traditionally, the goal of this recommendation platform has been to kind of look at customer-centric personalized recommendation. So what it means is it would try to recommend the most relevant items to each user. So doing that top K seems like a very natural choice, that you find the relevance scores for each item for a particular user, and then choose the top K items which are most relevant for this user. Now here K may be defined as the size of the playlist you want to show to the user. So if it's 4, then top 4. So you just choose it accordingly. However, in situations where you have, like, if you think about context like Amazon or Netflix, you always have like there are multiple stakeholders, and the main two are producers on one side and customers on another side. So you can think about producers of goods and services which are there on this platform. For example, in Yelp, the restaurants would be the producers, or in Airbnb, the hosts are going to be the producers. And on the other hand, there are customers who uses this platform and who are consuming these services. So they are also an important part. Of course, these are the most important parts of this recommendation system in e-commerce platforms. And then the platform is always there. It sits at the center of the recommendation system, and it accesses information about the user and then suggests them services. So what is happening with top K recommendation is, of course, it is best for the customer. But our investigation shows that there can be situations where the producers, some of the new producers or some producers are never being shown or recommended to any user. And that is kind of the unfairness we are trying to deal with. So now I'm going to give,
I have a
like,
question.
yes,
So,
yes, sure.
what do you mean by producer? You mean some products are never shown to the
Some
user?
let's try to look at producers itself, and let's say each product is associated to one producer. Let's take like an
Okay,
abstract
okay.
scenario. Each producer has like one product, and their product is not exactly shown to any user.
Why this
And
would be happening?
yes, so let me just explain with this example. It will be
Okay,
easy
cool.
to explain why it would happen.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll just answer your question in 1 minute.
Sure,
Maybe I'll
sure,
just go
sure.
with the flow.
No
So
problem.
the setup is as follows. There are n customers on one side, and let's say each of them has like a capacity of K slots where the advertisements would happen. And for this example, you can see K is equal to 3. So each of them has a fixed size of how many recommendation it would be shown. And there are n customers. On the other side, you have m producers, and so you basically want to show each of this so any one of this restaurant in any one of these slots. Now, the question that was asked, I'm just repeating the question, and when will it happen that a producer is never shown to a customer? So again, let's recall top K. So top K, what it would do is it would try to connect, try to find a relevance score between each customer producer pair. And it may happen that all the first 3 restaurants are the top 3 restaurants for all 3 users according to the relevance scores. And maybe this fourth producer is like a new restaurant with not much relevance for this three. So what would happen is this 3 restaurants will appear in all 3 users recommendation, and the fourth producer will never occur here. And this is like a very small scenario, but the data sets we are dealing with, it has like a huge number of producers, a large number of customers. So it's very likely to see, and we will show that in our experiments, that if you just implement top K, many producers are not visible at all. So they will just lose, I mean, they won't be given any visibility because you're just choosing the top K. And there's a high chance that this producer does not fall under this top K thing when K, the size of K is small. Right? So does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so this is the situation we are dealing with. So we are trying to so this is the setup. We have n customers, n producers, and you have to choose K producer for each user and give them the recommendation. Now, to get into what kind of fairness we are talking about, I'll just wait for some time to understand what kind of fairness we are talking about, and that will kind of relate to the fair allocation space. I'll come to this in a minute. So what we propose here is that you start with a data set, use your favorite recommendation algorithm to get the relevance scores, and then use this, then take this entire two-sided fairness problem into a fair allocation problem. And this fair allocation problem actually stems from the literature of computational social choice theory, where the idea is to understand what works best when you look at the welfare of people instead of just trying to maximize revenue. So that's a very high level view of what computational social choice theory is. And we try to use those concepts to say that how are we going to increase the welfare for both like customers and producers. And thus we give two-sided fair recommendation solution. So for the next few slides, I will just talk about fair allocation. And after that, I will tell you how are we taking these concepts to the recommendation systems. And I think the mapping you would be able to see as I progress. So yeah, let's look at what is this fair allocation problem. So it's a very simple setting. You are given a set of agents N. So you know that there's a set of agents who are there in the system who want some goods. And you also have a sense of what is this set of goods. So everything is finite and fixed, given to you. There's a set of agents, let's say in this example 4, and there's a set of goods which is in this bundle. And each agent has a value for each good, and that value is captured by VIG. And we assume non-negative valuation. And yeah, let's not focus too much on non-negative part, but so these are the valuations which are again given. So you already know who values what. So the idea is, given all this valuation, can you compute a fair allocation, where allocation is an n partition of this set of goods. So you have n agents and you give like A1 to one agent. So this is like A1, A2 up to AN. So doing that partitioning is the goal, and you have to then ensure that this partition makes everybody happy or it's fair. Now, this fair allocation problem finds its application in multiple domains, like division of inheritance, where again, I'm just talking about indivisible goods. So here inheritance would be like a car, which you cannot fractionally divide. So you have to give it as a whole. So how do you do it in a fair way? Again, dividing cloud computing resources among people, resource allocation, allocating courses among students. And some of these solutions have been implemented in this website called splitit.org. And it shows that if you have like a room allocation problem, you give them values, you tell them like, okay, we are 5 people, these are the set of goods that we have, we want to divide these rooms more fairly, how do we do it, and split it? it has implemented some of this algorithm that comes out from this literature, and it tells you that, okay, you can take this allocation and this is fair according to this definition and so on. So this has like, it's a very interesting space, and it's more interesting to see that people have been trying to use this fairness concepts in fair classification. And if you are already familiar with machine learning and classification, you would also know that there is an increasing set of like papers and results on how to make classifiers or this automatic decision-making algorithms more and more fair. And people have been trying to use this fair allocation concepts in fair classification. So the key questions that are asked in this space are, what do you mean by fairness? Now, when you have a definition of fairness, can you show that you can always find such a fair allocation? So that's the existence question. And third is, if it exists, can you find such an allocation in polynomial time? That's the efficiency part. Now, let's start with the definition of fairness. So there are two popular fairness notions, which have been defined like in 1948 and 67. So it's very old. So these definitions are more applicable for divisible goods like a cake or a piece of land. And this problem is also known as cake cutting problem for the divisible one. So I'll define these two notions first. So what is envy freeness? So envy freeness is the fairness notion when you ensure that after you have this allocation, everybody is happy with their own bundle. So that is, if you take any pair of agents I and J, the valuation of an agent I for its own bundle is always greater than the valuation of I, the same person, for somebody else's bundle. So this is known as envy freeness. If this is achieved for every pair of users, then you say that, okay, this is envy free. And I think you all would agree that this looks like a good fairness concept, that everybody is having some amount, which some allocation, which they prefer than any other allocation. And then there's another concept called proportional fair share, which says that it's more like a threshold based notion. It says that take a particular person, look at the person's valuation. It should be greater than or equal to the total valuation for this agent I for all the goods divided by the number of people. So it says that if you would have divided it exactly equally, whatever that value would be, each person should get at least that amount. So this is proportional fair share.
What is M? Can you repeat? Sorry.
Small n is the number of agents.
And M, capital M?
Capital M is the set of, so capital N is the set of agents. Capital M is the set of goods.
Okay. Yeah, the goods
VI of M.
Goods for every good, or is the good which is given in the recommendation of I, like?
Yeah, I mean, again, let's not bring in recommendation here, but
okay.
In allocation context, M is the set of all goods available for allocation.
Okay.
So VI of M is like what is the value for the entire set of goods. Now the set can have, okay, it's clear, right?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So the idea is, if you look at all the goods that you have in the bundle and just divide that by the number n, which says that these are the number of people. So just divide it by that. That is the proportion that you would like to have. So anything that's greater than that, you're happy with it. So if everybody satisfies this equation, then it says that, okay, this is proportionally fair share. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So the problem with this two definition is that this definition do not translate well to the indivisible case. And there's a very simple example to show why. So let's say you have like one laptop and there are two students. Now you have to give, you cannot break the laptop, it is indivisible. So you have to give the laptop to one of the students. Now doing so, let's say you give this laptop to the first student, then the second student will of course envy the first student. So for the second student, the valuation would be 0. So this sign changes and it will envy this student. Also, if you look at proportionality, again, this term is 0. So whatever is like half price of the laptop, this person is not getting it. So it's not envy free. This allocation is not proportional fair share. So what I mean is, it seems like these notions are very strong when you go into the indivisible goods case. Hence, people have started looking at more appropriate notions for indivisible goods, and the two most popular notions are envy freeness up to one good, which is known as EF1, and maximum share guarantee, MMS. And it's when I go into the definition of this, so you'll see that EF1 is basically a weaker version of envy freeness. It's kind of the fact that if you have envy freeness, you always have EF1, and there is this comparison thing, and we'll get into the definition soon. And again, MMS is a weaker version of proportional fair share. Let's start with envy freeness. And yeah, I just wanted to point out that there has been several papers in the last few years looking at EF1, MMS, proving their existence guarantee and giving algorithms to get these solutions in different contexts. So let's get into the definition one by one. So, okay, first is envy freeness up to one good. So what is envy freeness up to one good? Let's say you have an allocation, and for each pair of agents I and j, you see that there is a particular good g which is in the other person's bundle, which when you remove, you don't envy that person anymore. So yeah, I'll again try to clarify this with an example. So let's look at this allocation A1, A2. So this allocation is such that the agent 1 actually values A2 bundle more than its own bundle. So this is clearly not envy free, this particular allocation. But there's a property of this allocation that if you remove the blue ball from A2, again, hypothetically, you just think that, okay, this blue ball is not there in the other person's bundle, then you don't envy this person anymore. Hence, this allocation, A1, A2, this is envy free up to one good. So there exists some good, which is a blue ball in A2's bundle, which when you remove, hypothetically, you don't envy that person anymore. So this is the weaker notion of envy freeness, which says it's allowed to envy somebody, but as long as you can think that, okay, there's one good which when I remove, I don't envy that person anymore. So this is the definition of EF1. So after this definition, let's try to look at its existence and algorithmic results. So it is known that EF1 always exists. So you, given any fair allocation instance, when I say instance, it means that you specify the number of agents, number of goods, and also give the valuation for each item and each good. If that is given to you, then EF1, you can always make sure that there is at least one EF1 allocation using that formulation. And also there are solutions that gives you such EF1 allocation, and NV graph and round robin. I'm not going to get into the algorithms in this talk. So yeah, so this is a good news that, okay, EF1 exists in most of the scenario, unlike NV free example with laptop that you saw. So in the laptop example, if you recall, it just goes to one of the agents. So it's EF1 in the sense that if you just remove this laptop, you don't envy that person anymore. So yeah, it's kind of looks trivial, but in more complicated cases, EF1 makes more sense. Okay, let's look at the other definition of fairness. And this is maximum share fairness. So here, so if you remember the proportional fair definition, it was saying that the valuation should be greater than equal to some term, which was 1/nth of the total value of goods. Here we replace that by a different threshold, which is MMS, and this MMS is maximum share threshold. And I'll intuitively tell you what this means, what this maximum share threshold means. So let's say you have an agent and you ask that agent to partition all the set of M goods into N parts. Now, in worst case, let's say you also tell the agent that in worst case, you're going to get the minimum of whatever you partition into. So all the other agents would take their favorite bundle, and whatever is left over, you're going to get. So if that's the case, then a rational agent is going to, it will try to maximize the worst case bundle. And that value, that maximum worst case bundle, that value is the maximum shared threshold. So the definition says that if everybody gets something greater than that threshold, then they should be happy. Right? That's the So there are counter examples which show that there are some instances where no matter how you allocate, you cannot achieve MMS for everyone. So that's kind of known. So again, this space have tried to look at approximate versions of MMS, which means that you cannot guarantee valuation being exactly greater than MMS, but then can you guarantee it for some alpha MMS where alpha is something which is less than 1 or like between 0 to 1. So can you guarantee like a constant MMS approximate allocation? And again, in this sense, there are so the recent result says that this alpha 3/4 is achievable. You can find a solution which has alpha equal to 3/4 MMS for every agent. And that's the recent result by Godsey. So yeah, so this completes the fairness notions I wanted to talk about. And now the idea is to see how these notions are related in the recommendation literature and how to achieve it. Now again, going back to our original example where you have n customers and m producers, and let's say these recommendations are, so that these are relevance scores. So let's say VIG are the relevance scores for each user and each restaurant, and that is somehow that's coming from some recommendation algorithm. So you have this relevance scores with you. Now the idea is to see that, okay, again, just recalling the problem that might have. So you have to recommend 3 restaurants to each user. And what might happen is the first, so here 1, 2, 3, this 3 may be having highest value for each user. And the 4th restaurant may not be recommended to any of these 3 users. This may happen. Now, to make sure that this kind of problems doesn't happen, this particular problem don't happen, what we would do is we will try to define a threshold-based fairness for producers. So here we would try to give MMS guarantee to each producer. And we would like to have a EF1 guarantee among the customers. Again, EF1 in the sense that you can see top K will be NB free for everyone. All the customers, if you just give them their top 3, it will be NB free. Everybody would be happy with their own set. However, that might hurt the producer. So what we want is to give some minimum exposure guarantee to each producer. However, while doing that, you might have some utility loss for the customers, and we want that loss to be fairly distributed. And EF1 is one way to kind of define that. So here, what would be the MMS for a particular producer? So the way we define it is, let's say that each producer, whenever it's shown to a particular customer, it achieves a value of 1. And now there are total n into k slots. So if you equally divide it among every producer, like just take the floor of it, it boils down to 2. So this is like 3 into 3 divided by 4, and that gives you 2. And how do we transfer it to a fair allocation problem? We would make 2 copies of each producer and try to assign both of these copies to somehow to among these slots, all 9 slots. Now all this 8, so 2 copies of each restaurant, all this 8 goods would go into the fair allocation algorithm. So we have to define some constraints that will prohibit some invalid recommendations. For example, we have to put a constraint that each person should get exactly 3 of these goods Nobody should get like less or more than 3. And also we should have a category wise constraint, which would say that if you look at a producer, so let's look at this producer, it has 2 copies, so both the copies should not go to a particular customer, so only one can go. So this is this constraint. And the nice thing about this constraints is, if you look at the constraints more closely with AI being less than equal to K, you would see that this constraint actually leads to something known as matroid constraint. And this is, so matroids are very nice structures which are very powerful to, so it represents a lot of combinatorial constraints. And so studying fair allocation under this matroid constraints is itself a very important and very interesting problem. So I won't again go deep into it, but yeah, keep in mind that this problem somehow represents this fair allocation under matroid constraint. So here, so this is a problem that we end up having, that we have data, we get relevance scores from the algorithm, we put it into a fair allocation setup, which is a set of agents. So this N is the customer. So the set of agents is exactly equal to the set of customers. The set of goods M, this is each producer with the copies that you saw. So it's like each producer along with their MMS number of copies. And then you also have the valuation for each customer and each producer. And you have these 2 constraints that would say that, okay, this is, if you satisfy all this, you are going to ensure MMS for the producers. Now, the only thing which is remaining is, along with this producer fairness, can you also come up with an algorithm that gives you EF1 for the customers?
I have a question.
And yes.
Why we have this MMS only for like producers and the EF1 for the consumers? Like, why can we have both for both? Like, what is the basic idea like behind choosing one for other and the other for like?
Yeah, so you actually, that's an interesting question. So you can also define MMS on utility of producer, and you can
Yes.
say that, okay, what I want is to give some minimum utility to the minimum guarantee of utility to the customer, and that's again an interesting question. So that would be kind of trying to have a MMS, some fairness guarantee for customers given these constraints are satisfied. Yes, and you can actually put in different fairness criteria for customers and see what works. So for us, we just used EF1 as a very natural, weaker version of NV freeness. So top K, we look at top K like a NV free algorithm. So because in this case, we cannot ensure NV free, the next thing that we wanted to do is, okay, can we have NV free up to 1 good? So which would basically mean that if I get some recommendation and you get a set of recommendation and we compare, then I even if I envy your set of recommendation, then it will be one product by which I envy you more. Otherwise, I think I would be fine. So that's the fairness we are doing for this particular work. But yeah, if you can define other fairness criteria for customers, that's like a different problem and might have a paper as well on that. So yeah, so this has a number of directions, but we wanted to provide this pipeline, this mapping. It's very new. I don't think before we, so yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think anybody has looked at this kind of formulation with recommendation system.
Even in normal fairness, I don't think people look at both sides. Like,
no,
I think it's
yeah.
interesting.
So correct. So fair allocation also is, I mean, you only look at agent side, don't look at good side. So here we are trying to have this 2-sided.
Interesting.
How much time do I have? How much time do I have? Hello?
Hello. Sorry. I was mute.
Yeah.
So we started 11:30. We can go up to like 12:40 something.
Okay.
So you have sufficient, like half an hour roughly, 20-25
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the basic setup that we wanted to, like, this is a pipeline that we wanted to propose, and this is like a very powerful pipeline in the sense that you can assume that you can have multiple definition of fairness, and then you can look at this allocation literature to understand what fairness works or what not. Again, I really don't want to get into the algorithm, but if you're interested, I'll talk about it. However, so yeah, believe us that there is an algorithm that finds EF1 allocation with all these constraints for this setup, and this constraints guarantees MMS on the producer side. So we have kind of two-sided fairness. Now, the theoretical guarantee that we have for our algorithm is that if you look at all the customers, the allocation is of course EF1. For the producers, every producer would be shown to at least one customer. So that's the threshold guarantee we have. So nobody will end up having completely zero exposure. And additionally, MMS guarantee will be achieved by at least M minus K producers. So most of the real world settings that we used, this K is very small. So K is ideally the size of your screen. So it's typically very small compared to the number of producers. So what we end up guaranteeing is for most of the producers, you get MMS guarantee, and even if it is not MMS, it's at least it has like one exposure. So none of the producer will ever have exactly zero exposure. So that's the guarantee that we give. And again, the time complexity of our algorithm is order of MNK. And actually this can be improved a bit, but yeah, this is, let's fix on MNK. Okay. Now, so we have actually evaluated our algorithm on a few real world data sets. And in this talk, I will mainly focus on this Google local ratings data set. So let me talk a bit about what is there in the data set. So it has around 11,000 customers, and it also, so this 11,000 customers have ratings for 855 businesses, and these businesses are mostly restaurants. So you have ratings for each customer business, and it's a sparse matrix, so you don't have ratings for everyone. So we take this data set, we use a recommendation algorithm to get these values, and then with the value we implement our FAIRREC algorithm to kind of make the final allocation, final recommendation. And then we compare it with some other benchmark algorithms like TopK, which should do best for the customer, but may not do so well for the producers. And then we also compare it with RandomK. So RandomK basically says that what if you just randomly pick a set of producers and allocate it to a customer. Of course, we know that this is going to be, it will do terrible for customers as well as producers, but we just wanted to give this comparison. So let's look at the first graph. So here in the y-axis, we capture the average NV. So average NV is defined as, if you look at every pair of user, U and U prime, NV is the difference in the total value of U prime, how much U prime is ahead of U in terms of the total value it has obtained. So that is NV. And note that if somebody has got higher, so if U is greater than U prime, then this value is 0. If U prime is greater than U, then this value is U prime minus U. So this is NV. And what we do is we take all pairs. So this is all pairs of users, and then this is 1 by n into n minus 1, where n is the number of customers. So this is our average NV. So if you look at top K, so top K has 0 NV because everybody is happy with their own recommendation. So U is always greater than U prime for top K, hence this red cross line, it's always 0. However, if you look at our algorithm, FAIRREC, it has slightly more NV initially when K is equal to 1, and then slowly it again becomes 0. So if you increase the slot size, then somehow our algorithm also goes very close to what top K is doing in terms of average NV. And again, to understand what could have been the worst situation, you can look at random K. So random K would just pick like a random set of producer, K set of producer, and give it to a particular user. And doing that, you would have like some higher NV. Of course, it's higher than FAIRREC as well as top K. Now, this is only about unfairness. So the more this graph is, the more unfair this algorithm is. So let's look at the customer side utility. So for utility, so here we will go a bit slow. So let's try to understand this phi metric. So here we are trying to compare a particular allocation A with respect to the top K for that particular user. So basically, given any allocation, you would try to find the total value of that allocation and divide it by what you could have achieved if the platform was implementing a top K algorithm. So this is the fraction. So the higher this fraction is, the more utility customer gets. So ideally, you would want this fraction to be exactly equal to 1. And giving top K will make you achieve this. So if A is top K, then this is exactly equal to 1. However, for other algorithms, this might not happen. So we wanted to measure how much less than 1 this a particular allocation is. And so this mu is going to take the average over all such numbers. So here we are measuring the average customer side utility. So again, if you look at top K, because this is like the benchmark, this is always going to be 1. And compared to that, if you look at FAIRREC, it is around 10% less than what top K is doing in terms of utility. And again, random K is, because it's randomly giving recommendation, it's around 60 to 70%, which is like around 30% less than what top K is doing. So you lose a lot of utility if you use some dumb algorithm like random K. So these are the customer side matrix that we saw.
I have a question.
Yes.
So did you analyze, like, so you use this data set, but does it also depend on like the number of products, number of ratings, and the number of custom, like a business or producers? So I want to say, like, is this thing which we are observing is more prominent when there is large number of things or small number of things, or which scale of industry it will impact more, or something like that?
Right, right. So
Anything on
if
that?
you, correct. So we looked at 2 data sets. In one of them, there are more customers than businesses. One of them, it had more businesses than customers. So the other data set is known as last.fm. And there we have like a set of artists and songs, music, and there's like a huge number. And then we have some people who like listened to it and rated it. So in both the data sets, we could observe similar behavior in the sense that in both the data sets, we could see that the utility did not go lower than 10% for FAIRREC. So that was kind of consistent.
Okay.
In terms of unfairness also, this average NV was not very high for the other data set. It was a bit higher than what it's shown here, but it was not that higher. Coming back to the question of what would trigger like a more gap, I would say that if K value is actually small. So in all, again, it also goes back to the theoretical guarantee also. If K value is small, so you have like a very limited space to give some recommendation. You can only give 3 recommendation. Now your top K can be very different from what the algorithm ends up choosing.
Okay.
And that's where the differences happen. But if your K is large, so you can, so let's say there are 100 producers and your K is almost like 60, which is, yeah, it's not like practical, but let's say it's 60, then you have like so there's a very high chance that your top 60 will overlap with your algorithm's recommendation.
Yeah.
So there, these things, the loss averages out, and
Yeah.
it looks like, okay, these are almost equal. And you can see this for k equal to 20, this happens, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost equal. Here, it gets almost equal after 2, k equal to 2. But k equal to 1 makes all the difference. So k equal to 1 would say that everybody has like a max product which is relevant. And
By
then you
pilot
have to
matching.
also satisfy producer side fairness, and doing that you cannot afford giving the best to every customer. So for some customer you have to give them slightly lower relevant items. However, that low is not that low. That's captured by envy. It shows that even if you're giving some low value, it's not very low. So
Okay. Thanks.
yeah. And okay, so now let's look at the producer side fairness measure. So here we are trying to plot this matrix H, and H is the average, it's the fraction of producer who achieves MMS guarantee, and that's what we are trying to plot. So this is an indicator that the total exposure of a producer is greater than its own MMS. Sorry, this I should be P actually. So this is what we are trying to capture, and we are looking at for the fraction of producers for which this is true. And that gives you the fraction of producers who has achieved MMS. Now, if you recall the theoretical guarantee, it says that theoretically we could prove that our algorithm would give MMS guarantee to at least M minus K producers. However, in experiments, we see that it almost achieves MMS for all K values and in both data sets actually. So empirically, it makes sense. You can always construct examples to show that, okay, using our algorithm, there can be this weird worst cases where we cannot end up giving MMS to more than M minus K producers. However, that doesn't happen in practical data sets and real world data sets. And what we could see is our algorithm is doing kind of giving all producer their MMS guarantee. But let's compare top K on this matrix. See, it's only giving only 20% of the producers end up getting the MMS guarantee. So if you just implement top K, of course you would do best in terms of customer utility. But for producer side, only 20% of them will get like a visible amount of exposure, and others won't. And again, random key just gives a 50%. So in random key, only 50% of the producers end up getting some exposure.
This
So we
this highlight
actually,
the main
mhm.
problem also which you are trying to handle. This is the main problem which you are trying to handle. We
Yes,
cannot use
this is
top
also
cape.
the
It's very
correct,
unfair for the
correct.
producer. Okay.
Correct. Right. So yeah, so this is the main yeah, I mean top key is the traditional thing that generally happens. We are trying to say that, okay, we don't want one of the side to lose out on fairness, or let's say this is, I mean, this is important. I think giving some minimum guarantee to producers for a platform, it's important. Otherwise, why would they even sign up if they know that they won't be recommended to anyone ever? So what we see is, of course, our algorithm does better. And the takeaway here is that with even less than 10% loss in customers' utility, our algorithm could achieve two-sided fairness for both producers and customers. And yeah, so this is the final objective that we have, and we see it in our experiments. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that we actually evaluate our algorithm in many other metrics, like how unequal the exposure are among different producers. And then we also compare with what the producers were, I mean, the producers who are very popular and who were getting a lot of visibility under top K, how much loss they are facing by not being that visible under our algorithm. So we have all other this kind of other metrics and some more algorithms that we compare it with. So if you are interested, just you can go through our paper and write to me if you have any questions on those. So in summary, we provide a novel mapping of the two-sided fair recommendation problem to the fair allocation literature. We design an algorithm called FairRec, and we have provable fairness guarantees for this algorithm. And then we evaluate this algorithm on real data sets, and we find that our algorithm gives fair recommendation for both customers and producers without compromising much on the customer's utility. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the talk. I just want to keep some time for questions. So I have some other work on fair allocation. Again, if you're interested, you can go through it, and I can also point you to the links of these papers. Yeah, and I have also worked on fair classification a bit, and I'm interested to collaborate in this fair classification space. So again, feel free to reach out if you're interested.
Okay.
So some immediate future direction of this two-sided recommendation is, so again, these are the questions that we have been thinking on and off, that what about an online setting where this set of customers and set of producers are not fixed? So for example, customers, they are coming online one by one, and every time you want to be fair with some definition of fairness. So how do you do it? And another interesting question is to look at positional bias. So here we are talking about the bias in visibility or exposure. So let's say your slot size is 3. So you might assume that the first slot is so if you put some producer in the first slot, the value is higher than if you would have put that producer in the second slot. So depending on which slot you have put in, the value changes. And interestingly, this problem kind of gets into this submodular valuation space of fair allocation. And again, it's an interesting problem on its own. So people who are aware of submodular valuation would be able to relate to this problem easily. So yeah, so there are many, many other interesting directions of this two-sided fair recommendation problem. So with this, I would like to stop and take questions now. So thank you for your attention. And you can email me at this email ID.
Does anyone have any question? Thanks. So I have few questions if nobody's asking. So one is, did you try this with any like real world, like maybe like, so I see the benefit of this particularly for the producer side. Definitely on the customer side there would be this thing, but on like if you look at the revenue side, because it's depend on both the customer as well as the producer, you need to make both of them happy, and in the end the only thing which matters is how much is the middleman happy or the site which is in terms. So is this like did you think like this have or any study around like having applied this on some data and see like related with revenue or something? I'm just asking, like, or you are thinking of something like that?
Yeah, I think you're directly asking that if this is at all something that these platforms would ask for.
Yes.
So I had a few conversation with people. Again, I don't want to name, but they are also, they belong to this platform, one of these platforms. And the idea that they have is, so they were actually interested in this in the sense that they looked at this problem very relevant for coupon allocation. So not directly in settings where they expect to earn revenue, but in the setting where they have to give out coupons, and there are so many users, and then you have limited number of coupons of every type. The idea is, how do you allocate these coupons among users? So here customer utility is, I mean, of course it has to be relevant. So if you get a coupon which is not at all relevant to you, that lower the utility also. Somehow it won't help allocating to that person. Yes. However, if you give them a slightly lower relevant coupon and ensure the producer that okay, all your coupons have been recommended to at least some users. So none of your coupons are like lying around with us. We have actually distributed whatever we had. So that in that scenario, they said that this is actually quite relevant. But there are practical problems. One problem is I mean, it's more towards how people can actually So again, it goes into the strategic agent situation. So they were interested in a situation where you have producers who know that this kind of thing happens, and they keep duplicating
Yeah.
themselves to attain more and more minimum threshold guarantee.
Yeah.
And then the question was, how can you incentivize or disincentivize them with more mechanism design over this solution to ensure that they don't duplicate themselves. So
That would be true with every fairness, I think. Strategic
yes,
manipulation, like people, if they know about a scheme, they will try to
correct.
overcome
Correct.
it,
So
like,
that was the biggest concern for them, that how this strategic producers can be somehow
interesting.
incentivized to be to harm the mechanism. So yeah, that will go to the mechanism design problem. I think it's like an interesting problem on its own. But yeah, I'm glad that you asked. Yeah, so that otherwise they said that this is very relevant for this coupon allocation kind of
Yeah,
problems.
I see
So
some
they're
places
not
where,
directly earning
yeah,
revenue by allocating coupon.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, they are okay to go a bit lower on the value that they achieve.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, you're saying?
maybe this can be applied to each producer level also, because if he has multiple product, then he care about like all products should be sell rather than single, like for within, like a competition among producer rather than a competition within products of a producer. Maybe there it can be used. Just a thought, like I'm just random
Yes,
thinking
yes,
on the spot, but
yes, yes.
yeah. Anyone has any question? I'm asking. uh okay, so I don't think so anybody. Anyway, you can contact Arpita after the talk, and also I will contact, because I have lots of interesting thought and
Sure.
ideas about this problem. And let's do our virtual clap. And thanks, Arpita, for giving this talk, and on a short notice, and at this time. I know you would be super sleepy now. Have a
No,
good
I'm
night.
all
And
charged up now.
okay. Anyway, thanks a lot for the talk and your time. And I will send you some feedback if I receive on the feedback form. And if you have any
Sure.
feedback about us, do let us know.
I'll
And
do
thanks
that.
again for the talk and all. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.